This is a place where we've contacted on multiple occasions to go inside and see what they have inside this building, because there are remnants from September the 11th in there. Get up here. This is what they don't want me to see. We've tried to get in this building. We can't even get in it now. The door's locked. Or you can see girders, obviously from the 9/11 site. Why won't they give us access to this building? What is the reason for it?
Wow. You're going to do every week? How long is show on? Weekly?
Yeah, we're weekly, 1 hour a night, and for 7 weeks we will cover 7 different modern conspiracies that go back just within the last decade. We won't be covering John F. Kennedy or Dr. Martin Luther King or any of the stuff back then. We kept it to the 10-year last decade, and believe me, the problem, Larry, wasn't finding conspiracies. It was choosing which ones we wanted to cover.
Oh. What is the 9/11 conspiracy?
Well, the 9/11 conspiracy is simply that the government hasn't been truthful with us. I mean, Larry, a couple weeks ago, the head of the 9/11 Commission Legal, I believe he's former Attorney General Farmer from New Jersey, came out publicly and stated unequivocally that at some point the government decided that American citizens would not hear the truth about 9/11. I find that very disturbing.
Which is?
I don't know.
What truth?
Well, we can't find it naturally because I don't have subpoena power. We don't have the ability to put people under oath and threaten them with prosecution.
What would they be hiding in that building?
I don't know.
What do you think? In your wildest imagination, what do you think?
Well, in my wildest imagination, I find it very difficult that those buildings could fall at the speed of gravity without being assisted in some way. And I used to do demolition for a living. And how could those buildings fall as fast as I used to free fall out of an airplane? I mean, if you took a billiard ball and dropped it the height of the Twin Towers and you just merely stopped it and started at every floor in free fall, it would take over 1.5 minutes to reach the ground. The buildings were down in 10 seconds.
So you think it might have been something inside?
I think that most definitely our government has not been honest with us. I think, and here's the big point I make on 9/11. Why is it off limits to talk about it? Why is it off limits to question and ask questions? You know, when I went through UDT SEAL training, I was taught in demolition, Larry, that there is no dumb question. That if you don't understand it, it's not dumb. And that's how I've lived my life. And I have a lot of questions that the government refuses to answer.
So how do buildings collapse at free fall speed, even ones that weren't hit by airplanes? Here's your homework. Look up World Trade Center 7, WTC 7. How is it that that building collapsed in its own footprint? Kind of handy for the banksters, too, because that's where the SEC kept the records for Enron and WorldCom. I guess we forget the dot-com bubble and all that stuff. All right, so anyway, here's a little bit of more 9/11 zen for you. Here's the head, when I say the head, the highest CIA person they could get on the television. And there's good CIA and bad CIA, by the way. You should find out about Ray McGovern. He'll tell you about the good and the bad CIA. But here's a guy, day after 9/11, saying, Osama bin Laden, I knew him, I met him. Nah, he's not the guy, you know. No, don't think he's the guy. So here you go.
Here now to elaborate and lend more context. The veteran and distinguished CIA officer we met in that report, Milt Bearden. He joins us from our Washington bureau tonight. Thank you for being with us. What's at stake in the way we respond to these attacks, Mr. Bearden?
Dan, I think just about everything is at stake. There is probably no more important action that the United States will take in the last 40 or 50 years than how we handle retribution and retaliation for what happened yesterday in New York and in Washington.
Well, if the president should come to you and ask you, what do you think I should do, what would you tell him?
I'd tell him, first off, steady as she goes. The president has the most complete backing of the American people that I've seen in 40 years of public service. He's got a Congress that is totally behind him. He's not troubled with extraneous problems, he can focus, go steady as she goes, focus on finding out who did this thing yesterday, and then dealing with it in a way that will not bring yet more troubles to us.
Well, it's pretty obvious that the judgment is coalescing around the president that it was Osama bin Laden.
I know we live in a country where we're often told that the first thing that comes to your mind, put it down, put the little mark in there. I feel slightly uncomfortable because I spent so many years wondering how the myth of Osama bin Laden got started. We have the Osama bin Laden who was the great war hero. In Afghanistan, we have Osama bin Laden who was trained by CIA, funded and supported by CIA during 3 years of war. I was there at the same time bin Laden was there. He was not the great warrior that went and fought the Soviet Union to a standstill. CIA had nothing to do with him. I think that mythological Osama bin Laden, never mind that he's an absolutely evil man, but the mythological Osama bin Laden causes me trouble, and I think maybe there is another answer out there. I'm not certain that I know what it is.
Well, Milt Bearden, again, you're one of our most experienced people with long experience in Afghanistan. What does your gut tell you about who's responsible for these attacks this week?
My gut tells me we don't know the answer yet. My gut tells me that I'm not going to go with the first answer that comes to mind, but there's quite possibly something else out there. Experts will jump on you and say it's Osama bin Laden's MO. He's the only one that is capable of this type of coordinated attack. My answer to them is he's the only one you know that's capable of this kind of attack. This was a tremendously sophisticated operation against the United States. More sophisticated than anybody would ever have ascribed to Osama bin Laden. I think we need to do a little homework. We need to appoint a team B that looks for somebody else. I'm just not convinced it was bin Laden.
You're doubtful. I want to come back to that. If you can ride with me just a moment, Milt Bearden. Sure. Dateline New York City, hundreds of people are now reported fleeing the area around the Empire State Building here in New York City. It's apparently in the wake of a bomb threat. Emergency officials are evacuating a 4 to 5 block area around that landmark, the Empire State Building. Now, things look calm from this viewpoint, and for that matter, on the street, things seem to be reasonably calm, but we'll pass that along to you. We'll be monitoring that situation, viewers, as we go along. Let me return now to our interview with Milt Bearden. There's no question in my mind that you're skeptical that Osama bin Laden, aided and abetted, or at least protected by the Taliban, should be the principal target of some large military operation. If I'm wrong about that, tell me now.
No, you're not wrong, Dan. I'm saying is, let me step back one step on this and say Osama bin Laden is an evil man, and he's a component of the terrorism that we're dealing with across the board. All I'm saying is that I think Osama bin Laden has become the metaphor for the entire problem of terrorism involving Muslims with perceived grievances against the United States. And I think it would be wrong to say this is a one-size-fits-all operation and to go after bin Laden, because an operation as sophisticated as carried out yesterday was an operation that was concealed from us for months, probably, before it took place. It happened without essentially a hitch except for one aircraft. And there is no reason to believe that these same people weren't capable of covering their tracks somehow on the way out. Now, I would go so far as to say that this group who was responsible for that, if they didn't have an Osama bin Laden out there, they'd invent one, because he's a terrific diversion for the rest of the world. Could I be wrong? Of course I could be wrong. It could be Osama bin Laden. If that's the case, it's an easy solution for the president.
So that came from one of your, government officials, maybe a good one, because you have good and bad. We have a lot of good, we have a lot of bad. Sometimes we have criminals, sometimes we have heroes. Remember Pat Tillman, 3 times shot in the head by his own troops. Sometimes you have heroes, sometimes you have villains. And D.C., maybe that's District of Criminals. But here's an interesting one I thought was good. You show them this. 9/11 hijackers trained at U.S. military bases. Well, it goes on to say, and this wasn't me, I didn't come up with this. This is in the original reports, okay? I'm not simply going off the reports of other news agencies, but Newsweek, Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Washington Post, Associated Press, Gannett News Service, and below, the accused 9/11 hijackers were named as having trained at U.S. military bases. Check it out. I'll go through the base list for you. Pensacola Naval Air Station. 3 of the clowns that we're told did the 9/11 thing, they not only lived there and stuff, they had addresses there, they registered cars there. You know, so it comes out in the news, but you forget. The anthrax came from whose laboratories?